Hey, it's Monday, September 11th. This is an end of the day SPY recap, first day of the week. And you can see today here on the daily chart, we end up with a 2 up. It looks like a little bit of a momentum hammer bar that at least for the moment, you expect to probe a little higher. In terms of the actual trading today, it was a little tricky in terms of some of the conflicts in play. First of all, we know on the weekly chart we have an inside week from last week. We discussed that on the recap. So at this point, if we're opening up in the middle of that, we're trying to figure out, are we going to break up? Are we going to break down? If we break up, do we fail on an inside bar? If we break down, do we fail? You know, you're kind of stuck in a tight range here in the bigger picture. On the monthly chart, we're still red, but we also know we have this hammer bar from last month that might at some, since we've only come down to the halfway point, essentially that bar, maybe we're getting ready to turn this month green at some point and follow through on this hammer bar to the upside. We still have time to go in the month. So there's a little conflict there, red, but a hammer bar, inside bar on the weekly chart. So what happens today, we discussed that it was a good actionable signal to the downside. If you would have had a 2 down bar, that would have had a target down here, which would have triggered the inside week to then its target down there. But instead, price decides to gap up a little bit. Pre-market range was essentially between the blue lines, and we gap up kind of to the upper blue line. Now, I discussed that if we gap up or start in the middle of this bar on Friday and start up and get a 2 up continuation, we can broaden out to take out this red bar here, compound 3 bars, taking out the 1 bar to kind of get lower lows than higher highs. And at that point, that's all it really needs to do. And it's possible that you either reverse from there or you continue. You'd have to kind of let 15-minute price action guide the way. So what happened was, if we go to the intraday chart on this, on the gap up, right out of the gates, we did hit that broadening target up here and then immediately had the first bar red. So the question is, do you want to go short here on bar number 2, anticipating a big failure after this broadening action? The only way it's confirmed is if you come to the halfway point of that bar, you're still above the midpoint of the prior day. So that's why there was a little conflict at the open. Or do you kind of play more of a red if it's going to come down to green move and see if we follow through to some of the higher targets? That's a possibility too. But what happened was, so let's just say you were aggressive on the short side. You felt you broadened enough, and the first bar decided to fail, so you go short here. Well, you had 1 push down. Here's your little move to the halfway point of that, first move. Then it comes down for a second attempt, and then right in here that fails on the 2 up. So you did have time to kind of break even, take a very small gain, realize you're not getting that sharp rejection out of that broadening action to start coming back through the bottom of the range. And in terms of price action, this was sort of the low of the day here on that second push down, and then it worked its way up all day long to give you kind of that momentum hammer bar looking, which looks like it wants to follow through higher, at least to start tomorrow. Even though you're still inside on last week and you don't really know until you break out of the week, what's really happening in here. But, I'm not saying it was an easy trade also, to go long here. You would have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 7th bar was the low of the day, as it turned out. Like I said, my theory is higher low of the day usually forms very early in the session. 7th bar is that's not unheard of. Normally it occurs even before that, but in this case, that 2 pushes down, that green bar there, that was kind of the sign. Definitely to exit any short trade, and if you want to aggressively play a red to green, you took out this little pre-market low. This was kind of the overnight action. The after hours action from last week. So you had that bigger range, but you did take out an area, 2 pushes down failed. So it's not surprising you grind it up for the rest of the day, close near the highs of the day. So anyway, coming into tomorrow now, at least we have a good reference point. Today was a little tricky in terms of, do you aggressively go short on the failure up here, or do you kind of go long, knowing you're holding the halfway point of the prior day? Now we have at least this yellow bar, that's the open of the week. So now we know, as long as we kind of open up and kind of stay above there, we can be biased to the upside and start anticipating possibly an inside week breakout. Doesn't mean it's going to happen. It doesn't mean if it does happen, it's going to continue strongly. You still can get a failure, but at least until if you stay above that yellow line, you're biased to the upside given how opening price action unfolds. And if we should open up, let's just say below this line, it's an actionable signal now. If we can get below the halfway point of this bar and make a 2 down bar, at least that's a good actionable signal that you broadened out, in compound fashion above that red bar. And now, the 2 down would then sort of project to the low end of the range, take out the inside weak to the downside, and then project lower. So it could be an interesting, Monday turnaround, Tuesday failure, tomorrow if we start lower and get a 2 down day. And if we head higher and stay above this yellow line, at least our reference point is to stay long relative to, the pre-market range and the opening price action. So we will see what happens tomorrow. And we have our reference points pretty close here, this yellow bar. So we'll see if we can get below the midpoint of this area and start lower. That's more the actionable signal. But if you want to get continuation, at least you have a good reference point to stay long, and then see if we get that inside bar breakout. But that's kind of still the key you're looking for on the weekly chart. Are we going to turn that weekly chart, breaking out to the upside or to the downside on this inside bar? That's still what's, you're referencing, and you're kind of stuck inside of there. And that's why things could be tricky until you get a definite confirmation one way or the other. But in the meantime, you're probing some of these moves just to see if they will follow through, towards that inside bar breakout. And today didn't really fail, didn't really, have a strong move up, but it did close with a little bit of a, hammer bar that looks to continue higher. So we'll see what happens tomorrow.